Welcome to another segment of our Acts Bible study. Today, we're looking at Acts chapter 14. And here is Acts 14, 8 through 20. In Lystra, there was a certain man who lacked strength in his legs. He had been crippled since birth and had never walked. Sitting there, he heard Paul speaking. Paul stared at him and saw that he believed he could be healed. Raising his voice, Paul said, "Stand up straight on your feet." He jumped up and began to walk. Seeing what Paul had done, the crowd shouted in the Lycaonian language, "The gods have taken human form and come down to visit us." They referred to Barnabas as Zeus and to Paul as Hermes, since Paul was the main speaker. The priest of Zeus, whose temple was located just outside the city, brought bowls and wreaths to the city gates. Along with the crowds, he wanted to offer sacrifices to them. When the Lord's messengers Barnabas and Paul found out about this, they tore their clothes in protest and rushed out into the crowd. They shouted, "People, what are you doing? We are humans too, just like you. We are proclaiming the good news to you. Turn to the living God and away from such worthless things. He made the heaven, the earth, the sea, and everything in them. In the past, he permitted every nation to go its own way. Nevertheless, he hasn't left himself without a witness. He has blessed you by giving you rain from above as well as seasonal harvests, and satisfying you with food and happiness." Even with these words, they barely kept the crowds from sacrificing to them. Jews from Antioch and Iconium arrived and won the crowds over. They stoned Paul and dragged him out of the city, supposing he was dead. When the disciples surrounded him, he got up and entered the city again. The following day, he left with Barnabas for Derbe. Today we're looking at Acts chapter 14, and we are continuing with Paul and Barnabas touring their world tour. And they start chapter 14 by heading out to a new spot. People hear them, and some people like what they're saying and agree with them, and then others get upset, and so eventually they have to leave. That seems to be pretty standard. We'll end chapter 14 with kind of a similar situation, although they show up again and to places that they've been before and actually are welcomed. And they stay at Antioch for a long time. But what you just heard with the PowerPoint slides is in the middle of that. So chapter 14 verses 8 through 20, when they go to Lystra and they heal someone. So again, we have a pattern that we've had before, that a person who has been disabled for a long time is healed, and people are amazed. And this time we get a really interesting intersection of a whole lot of different cultural groups, right? With the Greeks who are wanting to claim that Paul and Barnabas are actually gods. And of course, we, I think, have a tendency to think that the early church was sort of just in a vacuum, like either you believed it or you didn't, and people came in and converted. But it's really helpful to remember that there was a lot else going on around the church. There was plenty of other, there were religions, there were a lot of cultural organizations and institutions that people ascribed to, and that meant a lot within their society, right? And so they identify Paul and Barnabas as Zeus and Hermes, and they decide that they need to sacrifice to them as gods. Like, it's kind of a shocking twist. They go from being in one place where suddenly there's a bunch of people who are mad at them and they have to flee, to being in this other place where suddenly people think that they are actually gods. And so, Paul speaks up and he wants them to understand, no, this is who we are, this is what we're doing, and this is who God is. And it sounds exciting because a bunch of people believe, right? even though they still want to think that they're people they should make sacrifices to. But then when we hit verse 19, all of a sudden, Jews from Antioch and Iconium arrive, and like it turns drastically. Like it escalates quickly and they have to leave. So they flee, and kind of hide out for a while, but then they return eventually to Lystra and Iconium and even to Antioch, and they are able to continue ministering to the people who had already believed there, even though they, sometimes have gotten crosswise of people. So I like that we see that sort of the church is trying to find a place among the religious beliefs that already exist. We already know how the church is doing, as opposed to those in the Jewish faith who reject the church teachings and who reject that Jesus is the Messiah. And here we get an additional layer on top of that as they are sharing the gospel with Gentiles, they are running into these other, like I said, layers of culture and layers of belief and the religions that are around. So again, we see that the Holy Spirit is at work. That's, of course, one of the big themes of the book of Acts. And we also see that there are always mixed results. So, sometimes in church, it seems like everything's going great. Sometimes it seems like, wow, where is everyone? So we might be used to mixed results. We might be a little discouraged by that. But the early disciples, even when those mixed results involved being attacked, like physically, violently attacked, the church persisted. So take heart, be reassured that the church has not ever had a moment where everything was perfect, but the Holy Spirit was with Paul and Barnabas and the apostles and is with us even when things don't seem to be going quite right, and when we're not sure where else to go with our faith. So we'll continue on the road in Acts chapter 15 next week. We'll actually get to go back to Jerusalem and hear some more conversation about the debates in the early church, because not everybody agreed on everything then, just like in the church today. So take a look at Acts chapter 14, and we'll get ready next week for some more on Acts chapter 15. Have a great week. Bye.